This inventory system is horrific. What happens is you accumulate items and then you have to scroll. Obviously that needs to be redesigned. Fallout is one of the greatest game series of all time and one of my favorite as well, now also a TV show. But it all started in the 90s with Fallout 1 and not long later Fallout 2. Those two games being considered some of the best CRPGs of all time. I'm Lucas Olivieri, creative director at Loreworks, a gaming startup, and I redesign upcoming games and their interfaces, but in this case, I'm taking a game that was released in 1998, Fallout 2, and I'm going to attempt to modernize the look of the UI and also the UX. Modernize, not streamline, very different. Old RPGs don't really hold players' hands, and I'm not gonna make it do that.
We leave that to EA.
We leave that to BioWare. There are two ways that you can play Fallout 2. The first way is the original Fallout 2. And so what I mean by that is you want to play in the resolution that the game shipped at in 1998. It's going to look very pixelated, but if you go with that type of experience, your experience with the interface might actually be better than if you go with the high resolution version of the game, and that is because there is no real UI scaling in this game. And so if you go with the high resolution pack, which I will link in the pinned comment, the game will look 5 times better. But because you're now playing the game in 1080p, all of the UI is also going to look very small. I will be redesigning the interface using the high resolution version of the game, obviously, because I can't redesign an interface at like, 400p. It's just not enough space to do something like that. But just know that there are differences. High resolution pack, better looking game, but also terrible experience with the interface. Lower resolution, original game, but the interface is also going to be a lot more readable. So it's a trade-off. Let's look at this interface, starting with the HUD. What's really interesting about this game's UI design is how it differs from the newer Fallout games. While Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4 try to immerse the player from the character's perspective by shoving most of the UI inside the Pip-Boy, which is genius but also horrible UX, Fallout 1 and 2 try to put you, the player, in the Fallout universe, almost like you're playing the game using a Fallout-style computer. It's very Falloutception. It reminds me of The Truman Show, a great Jim Carrey movie. Not very comedic though. In it, Truman doesn't know that he's in a reality show being broadcast to the world. And I just spoiled the movie for you. It's only been out for 26 years. Darth Vader's Luke's father, by the way. Anyway, the interface tries pretty hard to execute this vision, and UX really suffers for it. Throughout the video, I'll be modernizing the interface with a big focus on UX while trying to keep some of the Fallout theme. And I say some because I despise a few things that are associated with Fallout, one of them being the bright neon green text everywhere. Neon anything is probably the worst color choice for anything interface. It's the UI equivalent of a crying baby. I understand that some of you may be emotionally attached to the highlighter text, so I apologize in advance because I'm getting rid of most of it. Now let's get into specifics. What's wrong with this HUD? Well, it's obviously too small, but that's because of the lack of scaling. The end turn and end combat buttons are the same size, when one is going to be a lot more used than the other. The map, character, and Pip-Boy buttons have no business being here. They're not important, and players will simply use keyboard shortcuts to open these screens. They belong somewhere else. Same thing for the inventory button and this circle. This button opens the game menu. Your health is the most vital piece of information on screen, but it's not given any importance. You don't even know your max health. This skill dex button opens a list of character skills that is so tall it invades the center of the screen. The action points are too small, even in the original resolution, and they tell you when it's your turn, the enemy's turn, and when you're not in combat. That's a lot of information for something this small. You can have 2 equipped items in the game, but to see your second item on the HUD, you have to click this red circle. That feels unnecessary. You can use other items like stim packs for healing, but to do that, you have to open your inventory because there are no quick slot buttons on the HUD. And then there's this terminal looking thing. It logs everything. And I mean everything. You miss, it's here. You hit, it's here too. Only here. As in, there are no floaty text strings when you miss or hit. Everything gets displayed in this message window in highlighter green text, and that freaking sucks. So let me try to modernize this HUD while keeping the Fallout spirit. Let's go right to left. I removed the side panels that were needlessly covering the screen, but I also took this texture and reused it on the borders of just about everything you'll see. I put those unimportant buttons in the right corner, and I'm also showing the action point cost for opening your inventory in combat, something the game doesn't do. And when you do open one of these, you get this striped border. The end turn button is now much larger than the end combat button, and they're red when it's the enemy's turn. Now for the main attraction. There's a lot to talk about here. The skill dex now opens a list with 2 columns. I also removed the percentages because they make no sense. You can go over 100% in this game. I have no clue why they used it in the first place. The red button also changes to Fallout green when the list is open, so the green's still here. I totally checked that box now. You just click the button again to close the list. Your health is now properly displayed with a nice, thick, long bar. And you can see your max health at all times. The action points are a lot bigger and have the same functionality as the original. Red for enemy turn, green for player turn, and dark for no combat. But I added an enemy turn indicator that would stay on your screen until it is your turn. The sneak button that tells you when you're sneaking now says sneaking and not sneak, and is closer to the center of the screen. And with that striped border, which again, I'm using to indicate what is currently active. Below that is your armor class and my implementation of a hotbar. You have your 2 slotted items on the left shown at all times, with the active one getting that striped look, the use mode right under them, and the AP cost, the most important bit of information here, nice and readable in the corner. To the right of the slotted items, I added 3 quick slot buttons. You would drag these items from your inventory into the hotbar, just like every modern CRPG. They have an AP cost of 4 because in order to use consumables during combat, you have to open the inventory, and that costs 4 AP. But once inside the inventory, you can consume 57 stimpaks, 13 jets, it doesn't matter. Having the AP cost of 4 simulates opening the inventory. The AP cost would reduce to 0 after using the quick slot item once, and that simulates using things from inside the inventory screen. It's a little weird, but it's how I thought I could implement a hotbar without altering the design of the game. Oh, and the number in the top right corner is just the item amount. On the left side of the screen, we have the new message box, heavily inspired by the one in Baldur's Gate 3. This is the more discreet version. If you want to see older messages, you can click on the messages button. This opens a dedicated messages panel. Needless to say, I color-coded things instead of having a neon green wall of text. The game uses bullet points to indicate the start of a new message. I changed that to these greater than arrows because I think it looks more Fallout computer terminal. I didn't remove any of the messages from the original, they're all still here. My issue is that some of them also need to be on the game screen. You know, so when you hit an enemy, you get a damage number. And when you miss, you see the text, and so on. You don't see the enemy's health in this game. Instead, the game tells you when they're unhurt, wounded, critically wounded, or near death. And that's kind of cool. It's kind of like my D&D sessions, except my stupid DM makes me roll perception every time I want to know how hurt a dude is. I don't want to add health bars to enemies. I also don't want to add combat order bars. That's not modernizing, it's streamlining. Not knowing who goes next when you're in combat with 5 enemies is part of the fun here. But I do want to show health states, because having them printed out in the combat log is just horrible UX. So you'd see 3 little bars above each enemy. 3 red bars mean wounded, 2 critically wounded, 1 near death. If the enemy is unhurt, no bar is shown. Alright, let's look at the before and after. This is the new HUD during the enemy's turn with expanded messages, the player turn with collapsed messages, and the player turn with the skill dex panel. This video was actually a suggestion from K Novak. K, thank you for commenting, and I hope you like the new interface. Fernando, do you think there is like a more famous line in gaming history than war never changes?
Most likely. even though I can quote any right now. More famous. Oh, a mosquito next to your head.
Oh no!
Ah, got it.
Good job, Fernando. The inventory system in this game is trying to think of something not really mean to say.
It's old.
It's not. It's not. I'm not gonna give that the fact that it's an old game. Freaking mosquito. There are reviews from 1999 already complain about the interface of this game. And so, look, I can't sit here and pretend that I know a lot about 1990s freaking game UI. I don't, okay? That being said, this inventory system is horrific. This is your inventory. This tiny sliver. What happens is you accumulate items and then you have to scroll. Because the items take a lot of space. Obviously, that needs to be redesigned. I'm gonna try to keep this one short and sweet. Let's start with this green wall of text. When this panel isn't showing your character's main stats, slotted item stats, and carry weight, it serves the purpose of being an item tooltip. I guess hovering over items to get a tooltip wasn't a thing back then. In this game, you have to manually ask for one. I think the slotted item stats and the carry weight need to be someplace else, and the inventory list obviously needs to be larger to accommodate more than 6 or so items without scrolling. The last thing that needs to change for the sake of user experience is this done button. You would think you could click anywhere on this bar and the game would register the command, but the activation area is just this tiny red button. It's a button made for Counter-Strike players, not CRPG lovers. Alright, here's the redesign. I place the item stats next to each item. The carry weight is now visual and right under the inventory list, which can now show 3 columns. I also added a sort button and a filter button. Normally, I prefer filter buttons to be right on top of the inventory list and to have one button per item type, like in Sky UI or the newer Fallout games, but this game doesn't have nearly as many items as those other games, so I don't think you'll be filtering the inventory grid that often. With a single button, you can still filter things, and we get a much less polluted screen with more space for items while only adding a single extra click. And to stylize the screen a bit more, I added these 2 yellow arches. They're the top and bottom parts of the Vault-Tec logo, which I also use as a background in the equipment slots. If you've liked the redesigns, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. You'll be helping us make our own game a reality, and we'll be forever grateful.
I have a more famous quote for you. From Pokemon Red.
Gotta catch them all.
Are you a boy or a girl?
The mouse cursor is terrible. The color of it is terrible. I mean, it's like having a white mouse cursor, but then you're using it on a white background. You're not going to be able to see the damn cursor. And it's the same thing here. Your mouse cursor for this game, your pointer is a rusted yellow pointer. So is the whole game. That makes it really hard to see the cursor. If you're used to modern CRPGs and then you just start playing Fallout 2, you see this red thing on the floor, you're thinking, oh, that's the movement indicator, right? Kind of like that circle that appears when you tell your character to go somewhere. It's not a movement indicator, it's your mouse pointer, it's your cursor. And that is a little strange because it's used for movement. But if you move your mouse around, it follows your mouse. And I don't like that. I think the mouse should be a mouse cursor. And then when you click somewhere for your character to go to, then that red circle thing should appear. There's no reason why this loot thing shouldn't be just dedicated to whatever items are inside a container. I appreciate the fact that they have a take all button. That's cool.
Oh, okay. So when you click it, you have the character inventory.
Yeah.
And then the
yes,
right.
Exactly. That's the container. Yes.
Oh, okay, got it.
Like
terrible.
There's no need for that. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna redesign this thing. Here's the redesigned loot window. It's completely movable. In fact, I'd have nearly all of these windows be draggable. It can show 3 more items before you have to scroll. It has those inventory filter and sort buttons, and it's completely dedicated to the actual container or enemy that you're looting. And for quality of life, I added your carry weight to the window. 90% of the time, you won't care about your inventory when looting, but because the original design has it next to the container section, I added a quick inventory button. And of course, you can open your full inventory while looting in case you want more detail. There are two types of conversation screens in this game. The first kind is this one, where it shows you this pop-up window where, again, it's the Truman Show, as if you were the puppet master playing the game in a Fallout computer terminal thing. The other kind of conversation screen uses what's called a talking head, basically an NPC that was pre-rendered to talk to you. It's really cool that they did this in 1998, but I want to redesign these two conversation windows so that they're not so intrusive, especially with the high resolution patch. Obviously, I got rid of the conversation box. I prefer to see more of the game world in my games. The talking head is still here, but I added the NPC's name to the bottom of this TV screen. And here's that Fallout green again. You gotta pick your spots with it. Also in Fallout Green is the NPC part of the dialogue. Your dialogue options are in white with keyboard numbers for quick selection. The option you hover over is colored yellow, just like in the original, but I tweaked the mouse pointer so you can actually see it easily. I also added a scroll bar. Let's move on to the non-talking head screen. This is the original, and this is the redesign. Very similar to the previous screen, but there's no talking head, so there's no need for a TV screen that is just showing the game world again. To be honest, I wanted to make these conversation screens cooler, but I felt like I didn't have the game assets to pull it off, so I'm not totally satisfied with it. But in game development, you kind of never are, and sometimes you just gotta move on. I got that one. If you get it on Steam, this game will come with something called a manual. I am old, Fernando. I used to buy games at the store, and a lot of these games would come with the manual. I didn't read them because who does that? But I always would look through them because they were cool. This is the manual for this game. It comes with the PDF comes with your Steam installation. It has 158 pages. This takes me back, man. I like that in Fallout 2, some of the companions are actually bad for you. I like that. That is such a cool choice. I really like how old RPGs didn't give a fuck. There are a number of game screens that I didn't redesign, mainly because I didn't want this video to take a month to produce. Most of these screens aren't bad, they just need to be bigger for the full HD version of the game. I wanted to tackle the character screen though because, well, the attributes aren't spelling special, and that's just not right. I must remove the extra letters, like this is bigger than me, man. There, it's special again. We've brought balance to the force. Most of the other changes here are stylistic. The only real tweak is the experience bar. Players expect experience to be shown visually in RPGs. Showing it in plain text just kind of sucks. Which is something that is a staple in modern CRPGs, is the you see the character portraits at the very top at Baldur's Gate 3, which will tell you who is going to... Can you stop?
But they are just so many... No, guys. Just in the middle part of the room where I throw them, there are more than 15.
16.
Make it 16. It's impossible.
But the good news is I am immune to all disease. So that was Fallout 2 and all the mosquitoes that were obviously mutated with it. Try to modernize the game again, not streamline it, because old RPGs did not hold your hand, and I'm kind of a fan of that. And if you really like this video, then watch this other video and you can see me talk about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and make love to that interface. That's not hyperbole. And as always, remember that fun is business, and if you drink, call an Uber and make sure you get in. Don't just call it and then cancel.